Yeah, and I guess I had on last week, it was over in Austria, and he's basically saying, well, NIST is what you Americans use, and ISO is what the rest of the planet uses. Well, not he didn't quite say it that way, but it was sort of implied that we have our own little area. And yet, if you take a look at some of these strategies and frameworks, they're not radically different. In the NIST world, we sort of focus on here's how to do things as compared to, as Michael had said, with respect to the ISO, here's where we want you to be. You figure out how to get there. And in that regard, it suggests that there are things that you have to think about. If you're an international company, you may be required to meet a compliance requirement for an ISO standard. If you're a federal contractor with the Department of Defense, we see CMMC coming along requiring compliance with the NIST 800-171 set of controls and things such as that. So there's a lot of different templates that are out there, and the selection of them, all things being equal, if you don't have a legal requirement and you don't have a contractual requirement and you don't have an existing requirement, then it seems to, as you had suggested, be based upon how big is your organization? How complex do you really need to get? Because it doesn't make sense to build a massive governance operation for a 50-person company.
Absolutely. And I wanted to add one more comment to that. I think there's some of the frameworks that I was not exposed to till I worked in international development organizations like the World Bank, right? They had INISA, and that would come up a lot when we talk to our European peers. And there's a bunch of controls on that. Again, not terribly different than what you mentioned earlier with ISO and NIST. And sometimes it's just about making sure we're all speaking the same language. And maybe even for the sake of continuity, just tying it back to the original framework that everyone is so comfortable with, right? At the end of the day, it's all about the same outcomes. And that's the end goal.